Good evening. We would like to call to order the June 4, 2019 Little Rock City Board of Directors meeting. We would like to welcome those that are in attendance as well as those that are watching at home and streaming online. Madam Clerk, would you please read the roll? Call the roll.
Director Hendricks, Director Richardson, Director Webb. Those were okay. No, they're okay. Director Webb, Director Peck, Director Hines, Director Wright, Director Compuris, Director Fortson, Director Adcock, Vice Mayor Wyrick, Mayor Scott.
Present. I was going to... Director Hines, could you please do the invocation for us in the stead of Vice Mayor Wyrick?
Thank you. All please bow your heads. Dear Lord, thank you for letting us be here today to come and deal with the problems of our city and solutions. Please, I want to say an extra prayer for the folks impacted by the Arkansas River flooding, our first responders, any of the folks helping out there throughout our city and region. Please put them under your care and guide us through this troubled time we face over the next week to 2 weeks. Please let us seek your will in all that we do this evening. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll now start with a presentation from Community Development Manager Kevin Howard and Wanda Merritt, who is Director of the Little Rock Field Office of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Will be accepting the National Home Ownership Month proclamation.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, Board of Directors, we're here today to celebrate National Homeownership Month, and I'm going to have the Director of Housing and Urban Development for the Little Rock Field Office, Wanda Merritt, come up and say a few things while the Mayor's going to get the proclamation.
Well, first, Director Wanda Merritt, you have in these last 5 months have been very instrumental in helping us have a great understanding about what the Housing and Urban Development Organization does. You've also been instrumental in your work with the Opportunity Zones and educating our housing and neighborhood programs. So we first, on behalf of the City of Little Rock, want to share our appreciation for your servant leadership that you've done for quite some time. We should have the proclamation here pretty soon, but what we will do is just continue to praise you for the work and let you address the board right now.
Thank you, Mayor and Vice Mayor and the Board of Directors. I do want to first thank you for allowing me to come and to accept the proclamation on behalf of National Homeownership Month. I especially want to thank Director Wright. She spoke some encouraging words and her strong support of homeownership during the National Community Development Week, and I thank you for that. As we all know, homeownership provides wealth for families, provides stability, and also provides a sense of pride. And as the Director for Housing and Urban Development and the entire agency, we want to certainly support homeownership, and we are certainly a proud partner with Housing and Neighborhood Programs Department, providing the home funds that provides funding for the home program, which in turn provides funding for down payment and closing costs. And these funds provide an opportunity for families who want to become responsible homeowners. Again, I want to repeat, an opportunity. You really have to have an opportunity. And so we are proud, again, to be a partner with the city of providing these funds for down payment and closing costs, just to give people just a chance to participate in the American dream of homeownership. I know sometimes there was a time we called it kind of a nightmare, but HUD also provides funding to 11 HUD-approved housing counseling agencies in the state of Arkansas. And those agencies provide, pre-purchase counseling, post-purchase counseling. And so it's all about, again, responsible homeownership. So again, we are proud to be a partner and working closely with the city, Mr. Turner, of course, and Mr. Howard in this department. And again, just giving folks an opportunity to become responsible homeowners. Thank you.
Just to piggyback off of what Ms. Merritt talked about, we do receive funding from the Department of Housing and Urban Development to provide down payment assistance with our home investment partnership program funds. We do have available now a little over $250,000 for down payment assistance. That's the City of Little Rock Down Payment Assistance Program. We will be doing a press release on this within the next week to provide this information to the citizens of Little Rock. Recently as last week, we sold a house at 1308 Jones Street that we did a ribbon cutting ceremony at during National Community Development Week that we sold to a low to moderate income home buyer. Again, I want to express thanks to Director Doris Wright for coming out speaking during National Community Development Week. She did an excellent job. There were some home buyers there that were interested in purchasing homes. She may want to speak on it later on. But again, we're celebrating National Homeownership Month.
Oh, thank you, Kevin, and Ms. Merritt. I really appreciate the invitation to speak. I am a proud homeowner, and I purchased my first house in the John Barrow community in 1993, and I know that it will stabilize neighborhoods and communities, and as you say, people just need an opportunity, and responsible homeownership is what we're looking for. So that down payment and closing cost assistance, I'm going to make sure that my constituents know that it's available, and I'm going to encourage them to buy homes in Ward 6.
Well, again, Ms. Merritt, we want to share our appreciation to you. I do want to apologize. The proclamation is not prepared, but we will get that to you here pretty shortly. But again, we do meet often. Very grateful for what you've been doing with the Opportunity Zones. I think there will be an Opportunity Zone event here pretty soon, and definitely want to make certain that you're involved and leading the way, as you always do. So thank you so much. Do appreciate you. And before we carry on, this is the first time that former Mayor Mark Stodley has attended a board meeting since he left office on, I think, sometime around 11 a.m. on January the 1st, 2019. And I want to recognize you for your 12 years of service to our city. If you would want to approach the podium at all.
Well, thank you, Mayor Scott. It is a pleasure to be back in City Hall. My pass didn't work, so I had to come in the front door.
Is or is not?
It is a pleasure. It is a pleasure. And I appreciate all the hard work you all are doing. And I get a chance to watch you on TV very frequently. I want to tell you, I haven't had a chance to see my portrait over here. I appreciate that they finally got that done. It was nice they got that done. I'm proud to hang with the rest of the mayors that are up there, and certainly future ones as well. I do have something on the agenda, which is why I'm here, and hopefully it won't be controversial and it'll go through on the consent agenda. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Mayor Stodley. All right, we have two additions to add to our agenda. Item M1, which is a resolution for Arkansas Laser Services to participate in the Arkansas Tax Back Program. Is there a motion? There's a motion and second to add the item to the agenda. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes. We now also have item 2 for an ordinance authorizing the increase in the number of at-large members on the Commission of Children and Youth and Families. Yes, there's a motion, there's a second, and a question before we move to the vote. Director Richardson?
Well, Mayor, since it's been moved that we have it separate by Joan, my question, I'll wait till when it comes up before I have my question.
Oh, it was a move to have separate. I'm sorry. I apologize.
So I'll wait until then to have my questions.
There's a motion and a second to move to add to separate. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes to add to the separate column. That was M2. Madam Clerk, if you would, please read the consent agenda from items 1 through 6.
A resolution authorizes the city manager to enter into a contract with Bill Knight Ford Fleet Center in amount not to exceed $62,652 for the purchase of 2 Ford F-150 Crew Cab 4x4 trucks for the Public Works Department and for the purposes. A resolution authorizes the city manager to award a contract to JCI Construction Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $1,221,271.50 for West Baseline Road improvements and for the purposes. A resolution authorizes the city manager to enter into a contract with JHL Builders LLC for the revitalization of property located at 1519 East Twin Lakes Drive in the Twin Lakes subdivision, utilizing home investment partnership program funds and for the purposes. A resolution authorizes the city manager to renew contracts for housing opportunities for persons with AIDS in a total combined amount not to exceed $382,346.80 for a one-year term and for the purposes. A resolution to amend Little Rock, Arkansas Resolution number 14,667 of November 21st, 2017 to approve an increase in construction cost with JHL Builders LLC an amount of $19,600 to change the exterior siding for properties located at 4709 and 4711 Charles Bussey Boulevard and for the purposes. A resolution authorized the use of the National Cooperative Purchasing Alliance contract as an option for the acquisition of commodities and services for the city of Little Rock, Arkansas and for the purposes. Do you want me to go ahead and include M1?
Yes.
Okay. A resolution to certify local government endorsement of Arkansas Laser Services LLC located at 2200 Commercial Lane, Little Rock, Arkansas, to participate in the Arkansas Tax Back Program is authorized by Arkansas Code 15-4-2706D of the Consolidated Incentive Act of 2003 and for the purposes. That concludes the consent agenda.
There's a motion and second to approve the adoption of the consent agenda. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes. We're now entering to our opportunity for citizens' communication. We have Mr. Russ Raycott.
Thank you, Mayor. Before we get started, I do need to bring out a point. There were 2 individuals that turned in cards after the gavel had been struck and the meeting had started, and I believe that
Can I respond to that, please?
Let's let him
Okay.
finish.
But anyway, I just wanted to bring that to your attention. Secondly, the topic that I want to bring up tonight is about this time last year, and I'm sure Mayor Stodola can attest to that, as Mr. Carpenter and the board. I was here complaining about lack of cooperation with Freedom of Information requests, and that's happened again. I have numerous requests that have been ignored. And under the statute, failure to respond within a statutory time or to ask for an extension is a denial. What I've done is, with these denials, I've combined them all together in another denial of rights lawsuit. I've also prepared a criminal complaint with the Pulaski County Sheriff's Department, because the Little Rock Police Department won't take a complaint, that lists the chief of police and the mayor. Now, that's important because if the mayor is convicted of this criminal offense, that's grounds for removal from office for malfeasance. And there's an attorney general's opinion that outlines how that how that happens. I've done everything I can to give the city time to do this, but we have a mayor that's campaigned on transparency, and constantly both him and the chief say, well, they're transparent, and that's a lie. When you fail to respond to the Freedom of Information request and you say that you're transparent, that is a lie. You board, you need to act, because these things are going to come out there, and if there's any way that I can do civil penalties and charge them for that, I would do it. But under that statute, it's not. It's just to enforce the law. And I'm going to give you a fair warning. This is going to fall back in Judge Pierce's court, and Judge Pierce told the police department if they were back there again on a similar or another matter, he was going to do whatever he could in his power to take care of that. And you just need to do the right thing, respond to these requests in the right time. You are, as the mayor, you're the custodian of the records for the entire city, and the chief, by virtue of being the head of the department, he's the official custodian of the records. So if you have staff that are negligent and not doing their jobs, it's going to come back on you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ray Cobb. Lavelle Williams, please. Sorry. Hold on one second. Sorry, Mr. Williams. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Thank you so much, Director.
Those two
Computers.
individuals had already turned in cards well in advance before the gavel fell, but it was on the wrong card. I gave them a white card and asked them to fill it out, and held their yellow card so that they had proof that it had been turned in time.
Thank you so much for that information. Madam Clerk, Madam Attorney, is there anything you would like to say? Oh, all right. Thank you so much, Mr. Lavelle. No, not Madam Attorney. Mr. Attorney. Mr. Lavelle Williams, would you like to come up? Hey, we're going to have a fun night tonight.
Okay, my name is Lavelle Williams, and I'm the secretary for the Wakefield Neighborhood Association. And I would just like to invite the board, especially City Director, Mr. Richardson, and the police chief to our next association meeting, which is the 25th at 5:30 at the 7414 Door Springs, which is the Alert Center. Our motto is rebuilding Wakefield one step at a time, and we're trying to improve the neighborhood of Wakefield. So that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Mr. Lavelle, thank you so much for that information. We do appreciate you. All right, Madam Clerk, would you please read item 7 for the first time?
An ordinance to amend Little Rock, Arkansas ordinance number 21,683 of December 18th, 2018, to adjust the fiscal year 2019 budget ordinance to reflect revenue and expenditure adjustments for the general and street funds, to declare an emergency and for the purposes. First reading.
Motion to suspend the rules, placed on second reading. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say nay.
Who seconded?
The second was Lance.
Okay.
Motion passes. Second reading.
An ordinance to amend Little Rock, Arkansas ordinance number 21,683 to adjust the fiscal year 2019 budget ordinance to reflect revenue and expenditure adjustments for the general and street funds, to declare an emergency. Second reading.
There's a motion and a second to move to place on third and final reading. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes. Third reading.
An ordinance to amend Little Rock, Arkansas ordinance number 21,683 to adjust the fiscal year 2019 budget ordinance to reflect revenue and expenditure adjustments for the general and street funds, to declare an emergency. Third and final reading.
We've now had 3 readings as it relates to this ordinance. Are there any questions? Director Hines?
I have one question, and I guess Bruce is is Dana here tonight? I just had a question for her on an email she sent to Director Webb and Director Campiris earlier today that I read and wanted some clarity on.
And just, Dana, please come up, but I do want to, in the essence of time, we have a number of cards on number 7, so.
Oh, I can hold off till we go through the cards.
Let's go through the cards
That's fine.
first.
I'll hold until the cards.
Yeah, we'll go through the cards first, and then we'll have staff come up. Director Richardson, did you have a question?
No, No, Mayor, I can wait till we go through the cars as well. Just one quick question.
Thank you so much, Director Richardson. I'll keep you, Director Richardson, just click the sign again. Mr. Charles Bell.
Good afternoon to the mayor and board members. It's a pleasure and confusing and everything in reference to. I'm here in reference to the closing of Hyman Golf Course and War Memorial Golf Course. I've been playing golf since I was 12 years old. I've been playing for 50 years. I was a member of the PGA of America at one time. I love the game. I love the people. We're asking that you guys consider the fact that we're all getting older. You have more health facilities in this city than you ever had. We all have to go sooner or later. But, you know, there's no reason to take away the recreation that we have in our later years at this time. I'd like to thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bell. We do appreciate you. Before we go on, we have two cards that do not have items on them. Mrs. Angel Robertson and Mr. Houston Yule. Mr. Yule, is that, what item would you like to speak on? What item number? 20. All right. And what about Miss Angel Robertson? 20. All right. Thank you. Mr. Russ Raycop for item number 7.
Yes, Mayor. The first thing, I think there's some missed revenue that the city hasn't considered, and that is parking at War Memorial Stadium. The state owns the stadium itself, but all the parking lots and all the ground around that are owned by the city. And according to a response, Freedom of Information response that was answered, the city attorney had provided me with copies of documents and things like that, and the city does not get a dime off of any parking that occurs at War Memorial Stadium. That's during a ball game, when they have ball games there, or during the week when it's used as a parking lot for UAMS. And that is with the sales tax declining, people moving from the city, people shopping elsewhere, that is a huge revenue stream that we're missing. The other is the money that goes to the Chamber of Commerce. I spoke last time, or every time we've had that up here, against it. That, yes, they got, or somehow there's a check arms dealer coming here, but they're getting free property that's ready to, I think it was shovel ready is the term they use. And I think if you applied some of the formulas that you're going to use with the return on the dollar, I would think that you would see that the money that we give to the chamber every year, the return on our dollar is very, very poor. That was another thing. They didn't want to provide how that money was spent, and this last time they did, Mr. Cheshire actually did show some transparency, but that was because we dogged them to do that. And we saw that the majority of the money goes to pay those salaries. And again, those are salaries of people that fight local control of our schools, all the things that y'all have campaigned for, they go against. And I think that needs to be stopped. And I know the mayor said he wants to have his own economic development commission and things like that, and explore those opportunities. And I think that we could do that for far less than $300,000 a year. Now, I don't play golf other than putt-putt and things like that, but I think all this talk about the golf courses and things like that, we have a perfect example now to show that we don't need Rebson Golf Course as a golf course. That needs to be repurposed as a park and maybe even a water park, because think of all the money that it's going to cost to rehab that and keep that, and then we're going to continue to have floods because of climate change. War Memorial is in the center of the city. We don't have to worry about floods there, and it's used by all sorts of organizations for fundraisers and things like that. Hyman is a city course and probably should stay a city course. What I would suggest that you do with First Tee is just walk away from that, hand it over, do a deed to the First Tee organization, let them have that. Because we saw in these talks about First Tee this last year, that's a money pit. And the return on the investment from that is just not worth it. Another thing that you can look at, instead of laying off some of these employees like Director Wyrick and Vice Mayor Wyrick had said, is the attrition that we have. You know, we have a steady stream of police officers that are being charged with criminal offenses and other things and that aren't able to perform their duties. I think you need to look at some of those personnel policies and just fire them. Let them come back before the Civil Service Commission, but hire some police officers that can actually be police officers. We've got a whole other stream of officers over there that have trouble with being honest. And they're taking up positions that could be out patrolling. Of course, the mayor's got 4 of these officers keeping him safe. So we could use more actual police officers, boots on the ground type of thing. The other is Rock Region Metro. We have a trolley that looks nice and all that, but they can't even get people to ride it when it's free. We need to look at some of these things, get smaller buses. I passed buses coming down here from West Little Rock today. Nobody's on the bus. Now, I've seen it in the central part of town and the east part of town during the day. I have seen more riders on that, but we need to look at getting maybe more efficient shuttle-type buses that are more cost-effective to run, and maybe even look at cutting out some of that. But I think there's a lot of questions that we have about some of these items. I know that Director Webb had, and I've seen some of those emails where there were some programs that were cut off with community and Ms. Dorsett's program, and we were told that that wasn't factual. Well, we see that is, and you know, these programs, if we're going to have a safe city and we're going to be able to help keep Chief Keefe keep his promise of making Little Rock the safest city in Little Rock and in the state and in the USA, we need to have some of these programs that start with these children, give them some opportunities, give them some structure, and keep them from being on the street. I think, like some of these directors have said, there's not been a lot of thought go into this. And I'm going to fall back to an FOI request, because when there was announced that there was going to be a budget resolution on the agenda, I fired off an FOI request, and it came back that there were no records. And then, so I sent another one, and I never got a response on it. And at the first budget meeting, the mayor thanked everybody for working on this. He said Ms. Lanahan had been working on this for months. How are you working on this for months and talking about it? In fact, you even had one of your committee people, the first lady that spoke last week, that said that she looked at this the first month and told you that the budget was unsustainable. So if you don't have records out there and you came up to that first meeting and said this is what we're going to do, I just don't understand that. There had to be some plans. And again, why all the secrecy? Why did you deny these requests? Why did you not provide this information? Because it certainly wasn't available to us, because you stated that you didn't want to give it out to the press because you wanted to let these individuals know. And that's not an exemption under the FOI request. And I know if we didn't have it in the press, that the board members didn't have it. And that's been readily understandable, listening to their conversations and their displeasure. What I would recommend is that you look at these items, use this study that you had to see what we were getting a return on our money for. You know, we had another gentleman who spoke that said every year we've been at the same thing, where we're $700,000 short, $800,000, $600,000 short, but by the end of the year it works out. Now, in the past, I know that some of that was done by the vacancy savings type thing. But with all the folks that are getting arrested at the police department, we're going to have some vacancy savings this year. But I urge you guys to pull back from this, do some thoughtful reflection on some of these items that I've mentioned here, and then look at some of these programs before you start wanting to cut some of these things out. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Raycott. Susan Bowling.
Good evening. Once again, I have a handout. I can't help it. I'm a teacher.
Ms. Bowling, could you please give that to the Madam Clerk, please?
Page from that 74-page golf strategy study that we had done. The page in the strategy booklet just listed the names of the golf courses. I've added some information. Since I spoke last week, I've been approached by people, some I know, some I don't know, who expressed their dissatisfaction with the idea of getting rid of these 2 golf courses. There are 2 most common questions that they ask. Number 1, is the board operating under the misconception that all golfers can afford to join a country club, pay dues to a golf club, or live in an apartment building that has its own golf course? If you take a look at this page, that's what most of these are. And that's what they were comparing us to. If you think the guys at War Memorial and Hyman can afford to pay these dues or join a country club, you are mistaken. Take myself. I bought my first set of clubs from a garage sale for $10, and I still haunt Goodwill looking for golf clubs. Another example, I have a friend who dumpster digs at First Tee because First Tee throws out a lot of clubs that are donated to them. He pulls them out. If he wants them, he keeps them. If not, he gives them away. We are the norm, not the outliers. As you saw from that spreadsheet that I handed out last week, people from all the wards, from both sides of 630, play at War Memorial and most likely Hyman. If your goal is to return golf in Little Rock to the status of an elite sport, this is a good first step. The second that I heard most often this last week, why are they picking on us? Ergo, why is the board targeting one particular sector of the population, the poorer golfers? Last week I mentioned how much fun it was to see all those families hanging out at the splash park at War Memorial. They are getting free use of a facility that is costing the city money. They are not paying a fee for the water or for the electricity that is running the pump. There is no profit made there, and there should not be profit made there. The park is a city service to the community, and I'm glad they have that facility. Additionally, if asked to pay a fee, many would not be able to afford it. We pay for our golf, and that's fine. But why is our playground, our city amenity, our due as tax due, supposed to make a profit? It is not a private, for-profit operation, like the majority of those golf courses on that list I just gave you. It is a city park, a municipal golf park, a service to the community, and there should be no expectation of profit. If you took a look at the municipal courses in those other cities that the study suggested, you would not find profit. Lastly, the mayor speaks of repurposing, and there are some rumors going around that they're going to do something like Topgolf. Topgolf is a gigantic electrical driving range, an electronic driving range with a restaurant and a bar. If I wanted to play electronic golf, I'd buy a PlayStation. If I wanted to hit standing still in one spot and hit balls, I'm going to go down to Golf World on University and give the guy $7 for a bucket of balls. I plead with you, do not take these courts away. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bowling. We do appreciate you.
One last thing, I also looked at the budget page. First team lost more than twice as much money as Hyman did, and it lost $200,041 more than War Memorial. I've got to go wash golf carts.
Ms. Boland, thank you so much, and we do appreciate your service. Thank you so much. Mr. Jack Lofton.
Thank you, Board. I'm going to try to be brief. But I'm here today because of the opposition, I guess, to a central park in Little Rock, one that has a broad use for people of all different backgrounds. Right now it's being used, but not to, I think, its the full ability of that space. But I'm here. I've lived in Little Rock for 12 years. I love this city. And I was part of a task force, Think Big Little Rock. And that was a group of young professionals that came together to try to find solutions for different areas of the city. I was the head of the task force for arts and culture. We were one of the largest groups, and our group was made up of Little Rock residents and also of transplants. And we talked about things that could improve the city, from a replacement of Riverfest, since we lost a music festival. That was one that was on top of the list. But at the top of the list was a park in central Little Rock, one that was multi-purpose, broad use, and for people of different backgrounds. And that was the vote of the young professionals, and these are people that are deciding where they're going to be living for the rest of their lives. But we also talked to the neighborhoods around the Central Park. And we went to each neighborhood association, and each neighborhood association trumpeted the fact that they also wanted to see a park in central Little Rock, one that was larger with more uses. And each community, Forest Heights, Hillcrest, whatever it was on board with the young professionals. But I think it's something that the city really should consider. It can help bring people together, and it's something that's like the Splash Park is free. It's something that people can do without hurting their pocketbook. Thank you for your time.
Ms. Vicki Hatter.
Good evening, Board and Mayor. Good evening. I wanted to speak about budget cuts to the Museum of Discovery. It is, and you guys could correct me if I'm wrong, but it is my understanding that like the budget cuts, they will take effect July 1st. And as some of you may know, the museum, they actually set their annual budget based on what all the city would give. So if that cut happens, that would affect their operating budget and things that like they already have set to in queue for it to happen. So folks come from across the country to attend our Museum of Discovery. They also is a benefit right to our city because they offer discounted rates to come into the museum. So my hope is that like we do not cut their budget this year, and to possibly have talks with them for their upcoming budget to where it gives them time to adjust and give them time to plan for their 2020 budget year. I did have a question about the layoffs of the city, but that was answered already. I was thinking that it will be the older folks that will be retiring out, or the ones with younger children, and I found out that those are going to be the newly hired folks that will be possibly laid off. However, I do want to encourage you guys to think about giving them enough time or even possibly rotating them into some of our vacant positions and having them have first dibs on those. That's all I have to say about the budget. I'm not saying I'm for it or against it. Those are the concerns that I have off the top of my head. And two, sidebar, Mayor, I appreciate you for the literacy program for our students entering first grade to third grade, and to where we're able to strengthen that, because that is something that we need to do, is get that literacy level up. So that's all I have.
Thank you so much, Ms. Hatter, and I definitely want to make certain that and recognize that this reading series is a team effort. It was a great team effort between our Little Rock Parks Summer Playground program, as well as John Eckert, who's the director. So, Mr. Eckert, if you raise your hand, as well as Dana Dorsett, who is the director of our community programs, along with the Little Rock School District and the Central Arkansas Library System, and our entire teams that work together. So it's a team effort, and we do appreciate you. Mr. Chris East.
Good evening, Mayor and Board of Directors. Thank you very much for having me. I'm here to speak about two items today. First one being the budget cuts for the Museum of Discovery. First of all, I am not in support of the budget cuts for the Museum of Discovery. It is an amenity to our community. It brings in people from all across the state, and oftentimes it's one of the only opportunities they have to come to the city of Little Rock. And I think it's really one of our best amenities that we need to continue to support. I'm also in support of closing or reducing the War Memorial Golf Course and begin to use it for other uses. As you know, War Memorial is the largest and it's also the most easily accessible green space in the city of Little Rock, and it is currently being underutilized. It has many uses now as a historic landmark commemorating our servicemen. It is a place of learning, and is it a place of recreation and community gathering. We need to continue to grow those uses and make them more accessible to the city of Little Rock, and War Memorial Park is really the best place for that to occur within our city. The park is already great. It has a stadium, a golf course, aquatic center, walking track, playgrounds, areas for events, and both athletic and community oriented. However, I would like us to consider reducing or reallocating the space that's currently being used for the golf cart to make it a greater amenity for all and not just those golfers. I would like to consider changes to the recreational uses, and this includes potentially a baseball and softball fields, skate park, climbing wall, dog park, and areas to support our growing food truck scene. The park can host larger citywide events that have either outgrown their current location or could not manage the expense of their current operation, formerly talked about by Jack, related to the Riverfest. Again, we are fortunate to have a golf course in the middle of our city, and I've played on it many times. In fact, I've had a few golf balls land on 630, by accident, of course. But there are other golf courses within the city, and there are other activities like baseball and soccer, which are spectator sports and will bring people into the center of our community. War Memorial Park should always remain an amenity for all. I don't believe it should be reduced for the amount of green or open space. However, I do not also advocate for it to be developed for any sort of commercial use, but a public use, including a zoo or cultural landmarks such as fountains, sculptures, memorials, or just a venue for the whole city to get together and watch a movie. That is what the park should be used for, a place of learning, a place of recreation, and a place of gathering for the entire community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. East. Ms. Miriam Pearsall.
evening, Mayor and Board of Directors. I'm Miriam Pearsall. I am a native of Little Rock, and I'm here today to also speak in support of repurposing the War Memorial Park. Recently, I was a part of Think Big Little Rock, which is an initiative of the Chamber of Commerce to attract and retain young professionals. And I am invested in the city and would like for it to be the best that it can be. One of our proposals was repurposing the park, War Memorial Park, because it's in the heart of the city. It is one of the few parks that's easily accessible to those north of 630 and those south of 630, and I believe that it is a piece of the puzzle to unifying our city. On a personal note, I will be attending grad school this fall in Atlanta. And as you may know, Atlanta considers itself a city and a park, and they have many amenities, and they have definitely busted out the seams and have a lot of traffic to prove that. But I am definitely drawn to their cultural scene, and I would love for Little Rock to have an equivalent aspect to that as well. I'm hoping to return to Little Rock after I complete graduate school, and I would love for it to have the same amenities or equivalent amenities as to cities like Atlanta, but without the Atlanta traffic. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Purcell. Ms. Kara Wilkins.
Good evening, board. As a true millennial, I'm going to read off of my phone. So I'm here to speak about repurposing War Memorial Park. And again, my name is Kara Wilkins, and I am here on behalf of Think Big Little Rock, but also as a long-term resident of the 12th Street corridor. As a young professional, I, much like Miriam, left Little Rock a few years ago, and I returned and was excited to become involved in a program like Think Big Little Rock, which took into account the ideas of young professionals and thought about how we could work together to move our city forward. I think a little over a year ago, myself and the other Think Big chairs came to you all and presented opportunities about how we could work collectively to help our city grow. And I think Jack and a few other people have referenced that report, particularly in how we could repurpose War Memorial to be usable by all people. And while I remain optimistic in our endeavor, I encourage the board to think about how our budget can impact families and the next generation of people in our city. We've experienced school closures in our community, which means that there are less parks for kids around the 12th Street corridor to play in. War Memorial is our park. And I grew up using my summers over at Jim Daly. That's where I learned how to swim and using other amenities in the park. And I would like to see us reallocate funding to support more programs and usable space for all families, particularly those who live on the other side of 12th Street who don't always have access to facilities. Again, I am a taxpayer who lives off of 12th Street. I don't come to play golf and leave. I'm there. That's my community, that's my home. And I want us to use our dollars for something that both individuals, both young and old, can use. Both of the people who live on either side of my house are 65 plus. Their grandkids come and play with them, and they need a place to take their kids too. They also don't golf. I encourage the board to be judicious in thinking about how our city funding can be best used to make sure that War Memorial Park is available and usable by all constituents, particularly, again, those in a part of the city who often don't have access. Thank you.
Ms. Wilkins, thank you so much. Well, we've now read all of the items for item number 7. We'll now start with our Chief Financial Officer, Sarah Linehan, with your comments. Following her, we'll have Kathleen within our HR department, who's going to give an update from a human resources standpoint.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the board. I really don't have a whole lot to add to the things that I've already said in the last month or so. I did want to tell you that I understand all of the passion behind the discussion associated with the budget amendment. I do believe that it is important for the city's future. We're going to be issuing our audit report here in the next few weeks. I'm in the process of working with the auditors to wrap it up. Our current general fund loss for the 2018 year is $6,845,023. One of the things that I think will go a long way in encouraging our bondholders is to pass a bond amendment, or excuse me, a budget amendment that I can address or include in our transmittal letter or our management discussion and analysis that highlights the action that the mayor and the board has taken to adopt an amendment to the 2019 budget to address future spending to bring it in line with recurring revenues, and that will send a positive message to our bondholders, because I am concerned that a loss that was the result of several things that were beyond our control. We've already talked about the Tax Cut and Jobs Act that reduced our franchise fees, the very slowed growth in our sales tax revenue. We had a lot of increased public safety expenditures that were associated with filling all those vacant police positions. We're opening a new fire station. While our 2019 adopted budget was balanced, we've discussed in detail that included many one-time revenue sources that are not sustainable for ongoing operations and temporary one-time reductions in expenditures. And in order to ensure that we don't perpetuate the type of loss that was experienced in 2018, I would respectfully request that we take positive action tonight on a budget amendment so that I can include that comment in our transmittal letter when we submit our audit to the GFOA and to legislative audit and to the state in the next couple of weeks. Thank you. And I'm happy to answer any additional questions anyone has.
Ms. Linehan, we'll let Ms. Kathleen come up to give her report, and then if there are any questions. Thank you so much for your report. Ms. Kathleen?
All right, good evening. My name is Kathleen Walker. I am the Employment Services Manager for the city, and I work in Human Resources. A big part of my job during budget times is to facilitate and work with the individuals that will be displaced with budget cuts, whether it be position elimination or budget cuts. One of the things that we do besides facilitating the bumping practices is I reach out to departments on vacant positions. So right now we have reached out to both Public Works Operations, which is Kenny Wilcox, Warren Atkins, which is the manager of solid waste collections, and also the zoo, in asking the departments to actually freeze and not hire anybody in particular positions till we can do those placements. These are other departments that are not in parks. Also, one of the managers in parks has several vacant positions which have also been frozen. So they've been frozen internally in HR. We have the ability and the approval to fill them, but we would like to place all these individuals. So for the last about a month, I've been having multiple conversations with both employees calling me and asking me and managers. So when we're looking at these individuals in the golf maintenance and golf area, we've got slots that we want to put many of them into. We're also going to have the managers from Public Works Operations, Public Works Solid Waste, and the zoo actually come to HR and interview all these individuals. Then we will be looking at our other divisions and departments. We are already starting conversations with the workforce to look at other employers. We've also have multiple individuals from other divisions and parks that have actually applied, and we will be working and facilitating all that. In closing, the more that we discuss and go through weeks of this, the more unsettling it is for the employees. I get multiple calls every week. What's going on? When do I move? We had transfers all ready to go last week that literally are just doing the same job in another division, that we halted all of that. So the unknown is very scary for a lot of the employees. We also are in June, as you know, in a very busy time of year for public works, both solid waste and operations with street projects and the zoo. And so all of these positions that we are on hold, we've got departments and managers that have not been able to fill these really, really critical positions. So I'm asking you to look at the budget, pass the budget, so we can really start earnestly working to place as many people as we can and also facilitate the bumping process. And I'm available to answer any questions if you would like.
Thank you so much, Ms. Kathleen. I'll just give a few brief comments before the board. Yes, ma'am. Before the board goes on, I know we've been having this discussion since May the 7th. I'm hoping that we can reach agreement tonight so we can take the step to get our city back on stable footing as we are chief stewards of our taxpayers' dollars. And as we right-size our budget with this proposed amendment. While many of the citizen comments were about golf operations, I want to make certain that we share this figure with the board. Closing 2 courses before July 1st provides an estimated savings of $294,152. And closing, as we talk about, the reason the term is closing is truly repurposing from that standpoint. If we do take into account what the board has done when it received its golf study course recommendations, which was administered in 2018, it did make those recommendations. That does not mean we have to still go through a due diligence phase. You never know what happens once you go through due diligence because, and through due diligence, you find things that you weren't aware of. And so that's the reason why we continue to focus on, instead of closing, we focus more on repurposing, and we don't know what may turn up within a due diligence phase. But these are real dollars. If we did repurpose those 2 particular golf courses to different types of parks and have a great impact on the city's resources. As stated last week, I want to stress that continuing to delay will have dire consequences on the city, both internally and externally. I think I did share with you that we are now having our chief financial officer, Director Linehan, has already shared the effects that it has on our bond rating, as well as how we continue to move forward. So this, as we all know, is a very serious matter. It's about us right-sizing our government to make certain that our revenues match our expenses moving forward. So with that being said, I just stressed I hope we can come to an agreement tonight. Director Hunt.
Thank you. I had a question. Just wanted some clarification, Dana, from you on because it has an impact on our children, youth, and families budget. Or Bruce can answer either one. We were talking about the funding for the Mayor's Summer Reading Program. That came out of funds from the allocations of the Parks and Recreation. So was that funds out of the allocations that that Children, Youth, and Families and PIT gave to Parks and Rec, or did it come out of the Parks and Rec budget? Because there's 2. Yeah, so I'm trying to figure out, did that money, and Bruce, can you answer, did that money come out of the allocation that PIT gives to Parks, or did it come out of Parks budget?
Yeah, to the mayor and vice mayor and to the board, it did come out of the part that community programs provides to Parks and Recreation, but it wasn't any new dollars. Those are dollars that we have been giving to Parks and Recreation for more than 5 years for the summer playground program, or in support of the summer playground program. So it wasn't additional, it was the same allocation that we've been doing.
Okay, we just wanted some clarification because that was not brought before Children, Youth, and Families. That was one of the questions that we were getting from some folks. Did it have any impact on the programming, the slots taken away from the playgrounds? Did it have any effect on the feeding issues that we were doing with those kids?
I don't understand your question.
Well, what I'm trying to figure out is, we set up meals for these kids that are in the summer playground program.
Right.
Do the kids participating in the summer reading program, are they participating in those meals programs?
Yes, they are at all sites.
Okay, that's the only question I had on that, Mayor. I want to make a motion to, as we talked about our last meeting, I think it would be unwise based on the performance of the chamber. We already went through a period of 2 years where we had no funding for economic development being done by the city. And I would make a motion that we add $25,000, actual $50,000 annualized back to the Chamber of Commerce funding in this budget amendment.
I think before, thank you for that motion. Since we have a number of different questions, we should allow our directors to complete their questions, but we'll continue to hold that motion on the floor. Mr. Parliamentarian, that's a question for you.
Yeah, he's made a motion to amend. I haven't heard a second, so it may have died for that reason, but.
There's a motion and a second to add 25,000 back to the chamber. I guess we'll make certain that we're clear so all the board members know exactly what you're doing. So the budget amendment provides a $100,000 cut to the Chamber of Commerce annually, and it's realized as the remaining months that we have in the year 2019. It'll be realized as the budget amendment is set forth right now as a $50,000 cut. What Director Hines is motioning for, because last week Director Fortson asked to restore the entire $100,000. That failed. Now Director Hines is asking now not to do restore the entire $100,000. He's asking to restore $50,000, and by restoring $50,000 with the remaining years, it now becomes $25,000. So in effect, he's asking to do the same thing that Director Richardson done, except for the difference is instead of the entirety of $100,000, he's asking now to do $50,000, which will be $25,000 realizing this year. So I just want to make certain every board member knows exactly what they're doing with their vote. You have a question, Director Hendricks?
Can we be more specific as to why Lance is asking for this $50,000 cut?
And I think Director Hines shared, and Director Hines speak for himself, but he's asking because he believes that the chamber has been productive, and with them being productive, even in a way of budget cuts that do affect employees, he thinks his motion is to include a little bit more money to the chamber to help create more production as it relates to the Chamber of Commerce.
Are you satisfied with this?
I voted against it last time.
I'm not happy with it either. Why should we give? I've been fighting that $300,000 that the chamber had been getting ever since I was sitting on this board, and then after that, one of the mayor's son, not mayor, governor's sons, McMath, went into court against the chamber receiving any money at all. Are they some special entities, or what's going on? I'm opposed to it.
Thank you for that comment. Are there any other questions of the motion?
We need to deal with business rather than friendship.
Are there any more questions regarding to the motion? All right, the motion to make certain we share it again. The motion is to reduce the $100,000 cut, which is $50,000 this year, to a $50,000 cut that will be now $25,000 this year. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
Roll call.
Roll call.
Director Hendricks?
Nay.
Director Richardson? Director Webb? Director Peck? Director Hines?
Aye.
Director Wright?
Aye.
Director Campuris? Director Fortson? Director Adcock? Vice Mayor Wyrick? 6-4.
6-4, motion passes. There being none, we've already had now 3 readings of the ordinance. Oh, you have a question. Sorry, Director Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Point of clarification, that was Director Forson who followed up with that motion we just made last week. I voted against it last week, and I'm voting against it tonight. I certainly don't believe. When we're talking about, you said me at the second
Oh, I
time.
apologize.
That's
Let me
okay.
correct the record. It was not Director Richardson that offered that. It was Director Gene Fortson.
There you go. Thank you. You said it the first time.
Yeah, I said it. I apologize.
That's okay. You know, part of that is when we start talking about budget amendments, I think we need to adopt the attitude that we don't have any sacred cows or sacrificial lambs. And I think sometimes, unfortunately, that mindset takes place. Mayor, there was a couple of quick items. I think Lance made reference to PIT. I want to remind us during the recession in 2008, We cut $500,000 from PIT. Went from $3 million to $2.5 million. We never returned that back to PIT. That was during a recession in 2008. We made that decision up here. So I think if we're looking at any kind of reduction from PIT, we need to keep that in mind. We went to the voters in '93, went to the voters in 2011, and asked for approximately $6 million to do outsource community-based work with respect to gang-involved, underserved young people, with respect to youth development and summer employment. The part, Mayor, I think is interesting, and I see where it's coming from. I think that at first I was believing there was some misinformation with respect to us repurposing the golf courses, but it seems like there's a general feel or a belief that we need to repurpose the two golf courses that in my mind are the most diverse golf courses with respect to age, race, and gender. And it seems like there's a feeling that those are the two we should repurpose. Hyman, I think Charlie brought that up, and I think Sue brought up War Memorial. And about 11 years ago, we started looking at War Memorial, talking about a Central Park kind of concept with that land over there. I'm not sure Central Park has a barrier like I-630 in it that separates the city. I'm not sure that happens, but we're talking about revenue generating, and I find it interesting. Last week, we talked about outsourcing the maintenance of our current parks. And so we had 63 last week, we were told. So if we repurpose two other ones, we're going to have 65 golf courses, parks or park land. And last week we were told that we're going to have to lay off park employees because we're having trouble doing maintenance for the 63 that we have. And now we're talking about adding two more. And the closing of these courses or repurposing of these courses are budget related. And the uses that I've heard tonight, with the exception of soccer or some kind of sporting events, are not generating any resources at all. I think Russ brought up an interesting point with the land around War Memorial Park. I know during football games, they close the golf course down for parking. They do a substantial amount of damage to the golf course at War Memorial. I don't know who's responsible for maintaining that, who gets the revenue. If at all, City Attorney Bruce or Mayor, we can get revenue from the parking of the Razorback football games there, but it happens. Whenever they play in Little Rock, it's my understanding they want to play more games in Little Rock, so the golf courses are closed down, and they're damaged significantly with the parking on those golf courses. Are we getting the revenues from that? Are we able to? Can we legally get revenue from that? Also, the splash park. Have we even thought about, or can we even think about having concession stands out there where we have ice cream, snow cones, whatever? We have a number of young people out there at the splash park along with their parents. Have we even thought about having any kind of concession stands out there to generate some revenue for the city? And I think those are a couple of things we really need to look at. And what I find really, really interesting is that we're talking about two golf courses that are the most diverse golf courses in this city. I know golf is not for everyone. I understand that. But two of the most diverse ones we have in the city. Now, First Tee, I'm a big supporter of First Tee, but it's my understanding we don't have any oversight on staffing or salary, so they can essentially pay a director of First Tee the amount that we pay our city manager or our mayor without any oversight from us. Am I correct on that?
Who are you talking to?
The city attorney or Bruce or the mayor.
Director Richardson, to date, the way it has worked, First Tee has hired the executive director for the First Tee program. The oversight from the city is that the program is producing things in the way that's set forth in the contract. One of the things that came out of last year's discussion is that the contract has to be renegotiated, and of course that would be one of the issues that comes into it.
And do we do any evaluation of those supposed outcomes that are supposed to be generated from First Tee? Does anyone oversee
Right
that,
now or
evaluate
in the
that?
future?
Currently.
Right now, really no, but in the future, that would be the case.
It would be the case in the future. I heard a lot of whispering.
You still have the floor, Director Richardson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just find that really interesting sometimes. When some of us had a mic on, there's a lot of whispering going on, so I don't know if we're saying the right thing or not. I just find it really interesting, and I was going to ask you, have we made that decision? I think there's a lot of people think that decision has been made. I don't think it's been made yet, and I think I've kind of heard that, and I kind of understand where that's coming from now.
Right, and Director Richardson, if you may, you are correct. There has not been any decision made on which of the two golf courses to repurpose, because there has to be due diligence to identify those two. It may come to a situation where once we do due diligence and research, that it may be one, or the two that everyone seems to believe that they are. It could be one and not the other. There are a lot of things that have to go into a place, and what I commit to, as I shared last Tuesday, before management makes a decision, a few things will happen. One, we're going to have due diligence completed and have all the research done, so we only have to come before you one time to share the information. And throughout that process, will involve from the due diligence standpoint, and share what the decision-making process is, and kind of get your feedback before a decision is being made.
Well, thank you, Mayor. I think that there's a lot of misinformation, intentional or unintentional, that's going on about golf courses and what we're going to do at the golf courses. I wanted to make sure you made that clear to the public, those who are here tonight and those who are watching and live streaming, that decision has not been made by you or the board, anyone else.
It has not been made by management, and before a decision is made, we will bring it before the board for feedback. And also, as we're going through the due diligence phase, one of the things that we try to do within management is make certain that we also solicit not only feedback from the board, but solicit feedback from the community.
From the public, yes. So, Tom, are we allowed to receive resources from the parking during the Razorback games at the golf course?
Director Richardson, that is an issue that has a long history. Essentially, I think what has happened in the past is that we can't just give the property to the university for use because it's park property, and we have to bid the use of park property. There is a statute in the last legislative session that modifies that somewhat. And we also are working in cooperation with War Memorial Stadium. War Memorial Stadium wishes to have games of various kinds, or whether it's Catholic High School's home games, North Little Rock's home games. When they were building their stadium, the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff had a game there. I know there's been talk about Arkansas State University. And how the issue is worked out in terms of who gets the parking and all is really going to be a management decision within the city. Is it better for the city to get, 25, 50,000 people in town buying meals, or to get a few $1,000s in parking revenue? And yes.
But we haven't quantified the amount of parking. I'm not talking about the stadium parking, because we don't close golf courses for high school games. I can assure you of that.
No, but we own the land around the stadium.
Absolutely, and that's the difference between what me and Mr. Raycop is saying, is the Razorback games, we close the golf courses, that golf course in particular, for parking. So can we legally, or is there somewhere to vote on up here, charge or receive those resources from the parking? Does it go to the state? I guess
right now it goes to the foundation. Well, right now it goes to the foundation if it's the same contract that we worked through before, the Razorback Foundation, essentially.
And we haven't quantified that amount, so we have no idea what that amount is, whether it's a few thousand, 50,000, 100,000.
Last time I looked at the amount, it was $17,000 a game.
A game, okay.
But that's when we had 3 games.
When we had 3 games? And it's back to first tee, so we have no oversight, so they can essentially pay a director of first tee the amount that we pay.
Mr. Manager, could you answer that question for Director Richardson?
Sure. I think it's important. The agreement that we have with First Tee is for the operations of the golf course. So the funding that the city provides it does not go toward the executive director of First Tee's salary and benefit package.
And that funding is issued through an RFP or an RFQ, correct? For those services?
No.
I think last week we were told that that's how we gave them money, through an RFP.
There's 2 different sources of money. One is the appropriation that the board makes. The other is through an RFP or RFQ process through community programs that they have ascertained in the past.
And that comes from PIT. And do we
Correct.
know, and what is that amount, sir?
20, Dana?
$58. And that's through an RFQ and RFP. I thank you, Mayor. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Richardson. Director Adcock.
Yes. I'd like for Kathleen to come back up, please.
Ms. Kathleen, if you would, please come back up.
While we're waiting on her, Mr. Carpenter. I've been making some faces over there when Sarah or Kathleen was speaking. Did you have something to say?
Director Adcock, I was worried about the statement to our bondholders in needing to make them feel better, because if the budget we passed in December should have made them feel worse, it seems to me we should have notified them in January. That's all.
Okay. Kathleen, have y'all talked to the AMP, the sewer company, and the airport, and other of our outside partners?
No, we've just started right now with the Arkansas workforce, but we're trying to place as many as we can internally, and then the next step is going with the Arkansas workforce. So part of the issue too is we know what our employees affected, what their current job titles are, but we also need to get a complete resume or assist them in doing their resumes, because we also need to look at what their previous experience was before the city, because a lot of times people do not do a very good job of putting everything on their resumes and their histories. So we can't start these communications with our employees to help them and assist them with a complete profile and resume and employment history until we know exactly what individuals are going to be affected by this.
And I appreciate your comments about the stress on the individuals, but I also want you to understand that there is a lots of stress up here on these city directors.
Right.
We don't take our jobs very casually, and it has been very, very stressful on us too. I was in meetings this week with 2 of the employees, so I understand, but I also want you to understand that this board is really stressed and also trying to work through this.
I mean, I certainly understand.
Thank you.
So,
And I would like for you to look at these other agencies for jobs before you go to the workforce center, because I would like to keep them in the city's family instead of going to the workforce and having shared this talent with other people. I would like to just keep it in the airport and the AMP and in the water and sewer.
okay, yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Director Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have an amendment in a minute, but I've got a couple of questions that I'd like to ask first, and one would be to Mr. Eckert.
Before you go,
Is it an amendment to the amendment of, is it
Amendment
Mr.
to the budget,
Mr. Hines? Okay.
but I'd like to ask my questions first. And I have a question for, for Sarah, I guess, if that.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. And one of the questions I have, and when the mayor and I worked together before, one of the things that his boss did and that I was involved with peripherally was looking at the cars and how many cars people had and what car allowances were. And when we looked at that item in the state budget, I think people were really stunned to find out how much money the state was spending on cars and car allowances. And I wondered if we have a total dollar amount for car allowances, and if not, if we could, get that sometime in the near future.
I don't have that number off the top of my head, but there are not very many car allowances.
Okay.
But I can get you that total. That's very small. And with The take-home vehicles are also very limited. There are a few parks vehicles, there may be a few public works vehicles, but for the most part, all vehicles are used for work purposes directly from the work site, with the exception of some of the take-home police vehicles.
Okay. And I'll ask you this. It may be a question for Mr. Eckert, but I'll go ahead, or for John, I'll go ahead and ask you, Sarah. You know, we talk so much about the parks, and they're so important, and we're really proud of the number of parks we have and the acre of parks we have. And I think we know from looking at national numbers that just because you have a lot of acres doesn't mean you have a good park system. And so there are many, many things that you look at that help determine that. And as my colleague mentioned a minute ago, how are we, we're talking about having 2 more, and how are we going to deal with that? So I wondered if we know, and I could calculate this, but do you know what percentage of the money we spend on parks we get back in revenue?
I do not have that off the top of my head. It's a very small percentage of what you mean from actually charging fees for parks. Or, yes, very small percentage, because for the most part, parks amenities are available to the public free of charge. There are some small service fees for things like pavilion rentals or for specific programming, and I believe Director Eckert can answer more specifically. I did want to with respect to golf, the annual reduction of repurposing 2 courses as opposed to continuing golf saves over $600,000 from the annual budget. The current the $294,000 amount that he mentioned is the difference in if we close or repurpose 2 of the courses in June as opposed to at the end of September. So that 294 figure was 1 quarter. The difference, we would spend $294,000 more to keep them open for another quarter.
I think one of the things I looked at, and most of these cities included golf in the revenue that they talked about coming back, and I think they said 27% was kind of a good number to look at for revenue that came in versus the total cost of parks. Because, I mean, the total cost, it's something we need, it's something we want, it's something we love. They're not going to make money. It's going to be a huge cost. But it's something that we should be alert to, and if there are best practices that we would try to look and see if we don't fall within those parameters.
And I think part of the study results, again, we do not expect to make money on golf, and we haven't. Last year's budget, we spent over $1.2 million net. You know, when you consider the revenue minus the expenses, we lost $1.2 million, and that did not include some of the additional funding we did for First Tee with respect to the HVAC system, and I think the final quarter of operating expenses that we provided. But the golf study indicated that I think the demand in order to that we only experience a little over 40,000 rounds of golf, and that the 4 courses, the demand for those should be more in the neighborhood of 148,000 rounds of golf. So that's why the recommendation to downsize or reduce the number of available public courses from 4 to 2. It's a supply and demand thing.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I don't have any more questions to you. I have one comment, and then I have an amendment.
Okay.
It was not easy to get the information about some of the CYF, the summer programs, and we've had some misinformation that we've then tried to work on clarifying. And I guess my comment is this: we have a wonderful program with the library, a wonderful summer program that serves about 11,000 people, and I think about 8,000 of those are kids. And I wish we could have looked at the money we're spending in this extra reading program and put that money into the Museum of Discovery. because of so many of the entities are not affordable for low-income families, and that is one museum that does such a great job with that, and supporting families that are on SNAP. And because we now are duplicating a program, I wish we could have done that. I do have an amendment that I would like to.
And before you give an amendment, just to give a point of clarification, there's been no dollars that's been duplicated with the summer reading series. It's using existing dollars that were already going. It's in conjunction with the summer playground series, and that's the reason why I was able to go into action. So just want to make sure that point was clarified. Your amendment?
The amendment is if we have surplus, or if we have revenues that exceed the expenses, that we put all of those revenues into the reserve.
There's a motion. Is there a second? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay.
Nay, roll call. I don't know nothing about what.
There's a roll call been asked for. Roll call.
Director Hendricks?
Nay.
Director Richardson? Aye. Director Webb?
Aye.
Director Peck? Aye. Director Hines? Aye. Director Wright? Aye. Director Campuris? Aye. Director Fortson? Aye. Director Adcock? No. Vice Mayor Wyrick? Aye.
Motion passes. Director Hines? There's a motion to call the question. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes. He called a question. Excuse me? I believe the second was Director Wright. Was that correct, Director Wright? Second was Director Wright. We've now had 3 readings of the ordinances. Are there any questions? There being none, all those in favor of the passage of these ordinances indicate by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Nay. Motion passes. All those in favor of the emergency clause indicate by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed?
You approved the question being called.
Right. And then I went to the third reading. Yeah. We went in order, Mr. Carpenter.
Wake up.
We passed the amendment. Then we already went through third readings, so I asked for the question. There were no questions. I went to the third reading to go forward and to move forward. All the other directors heard me. That's the reason why we went forward. So it's passed. All those in favor of the emergency clause indicate by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Nay. Motion passes. I'm now going to motion to a brief 10-minute recess. Motion passes. We are on separate items. This meeting has now been called back into order. Madam Clerk, would you please read the separate item, which is now M2 ordinance?
An ordinance to amend Chapter 2, Article 7, Section 2-330-13 of the Revised Code of Ordinances of 1988 of the City of Little Rock, Arkansas, to provide for the adoption by reference of the code regarding the composition of the Little Rock Commission on Children, Youth, and Families, and for the purposes first reading.
There's a motion to move to place on second reading. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say nay. Motion passes. Second reading.
An ordinance to amend Chapter 2, Article 7, Section 2-330-13 of the Revised Code of Ordinances of the City of Little Rock, Arkansas, to provide for the adoption by reference of the code regarding the composition of the Little Rock Commission on Children, Youth, and Families. Second reading.
There's a motion second to move to the third and final reading. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes. Third reading.
An ordinance to amend Chapter 2, Article 7, Section 2-330-13 of the Revised Code of Ordinances of the City of Little Rock, Arkansas, to provide for the adoption by reference of the code regarding the composition of the Little Rock Commission on Children, Youth, and Families. Third and final reading.
We've had 3 readings of the ordinance. Are there any questions? We have to go in order. Director Peck. We'll go to Director Computers. Well, Director Peck? That's from the other one? Okay, we'll take you off. Director Computers, are you off? Director Adcock?
Yes. Mr. Moore, since this has just been put on our agenda, we have no explanation of it. And could you tell me what this is going to do, if we're adding, if we're taking away, and why?
Sure, Director Adcock. The board would remember there's been different numbers with this commission. I think it was one time 15, and then it was 11. Then it went down to 9. This is a request by the commission to go back to 11. And it's not an issue of having to meet a quorum or anything. It really is needing some more bodies to do a lot of the committee work that the commission does. So, again, this was a request from the commission that they would expand their membership by 2 in order to be able to do more committee work. They do a lot of their work by committee.
Usually when we have an M addition to our agenda, it's because there's some kind of an emergency or some time, a time frame that we have to get this done by. So why is this appearing tonight?
I think 2 reasons. The request was sent in probably 30 days ago. I don't know when the commission actually recommended it. There was a little confusion on our part about the reasoning behind it. Secondly, as you know, we have to advertise the position, so I thought this was sort of a minor change, and if the board were to approve it, then we can go ahead and start advertising. It was more of a timely issue than anything.
Okay, thank you.
Director Richardson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Bruce, is it 2 or 3?
2.
2, and they're at large. Since they're at large, does that mean they don't have to have any expertise in any certain field, whether it's youth development, transition to adulthood? I mean, there's any kind of requirement or criteria that we're looking for that we don't have right now?
And Dan, I don't know if you want to come forward. I mean, these are at-large positions. Obviously, usually people that apply for these positions, whether they be in this field or interested in the field, and they submit their resume to the mayor, and he reviews and then makes appointments, and you all confirm. So usually the makeup and the people who are interested in these that type of work have some expertise in those areas.
And the reason I asked that question is PIT was created out of necessity because some of those systems that we had institutionalized were not meeting the recruiting or meeting the needs of the population who were creating some of the violence and some of the negative activity in our community. So I didn't know if there's a requirement, Dana or Bruce, for a community-based nonprofit, whether or not we were looking at some of these traditional institutions that hadn't been meeting the needs for this particular population in the first place, which made it possible or required us to create PIT. So, Dana, if you can answer that question for me, I'd appreciate it. If there's any expertise in any certain area that they have to have or that we're looking for that we don't have right now.
Thank you, Director Richardson. Oh, Dana, I'm sorry.
To answer your question, no, there isn't right now, but what we have been doing is actively seeking individuals like what you're talking about. So we've done that several different ways, just through the communication that we send out regularly through our listservs. Some of you guys get some of that regularly whenever we have something. And we actually have a nonprofit conference coming up now where we're actively seeking people who work within the youth development field, and so we'll be able to advertise to them as well these particular positions. And that again is what Bruce was referring to when he mentioned that we wanted to make sure that this next advertisement that goes out for boards and commissions, that we would be able to be included in that.
And that certainly would include community-based institutions and nonprofits who are not receiving city funding, of course.
Correct.
We've dealt with that before. So I thank you for that. And gang intervention or transition to adulthood, any of those things part of those requirements, or just juvenile justice or school district or the stuff that was listed in
We do include outreach to all of those type of organizations because we are actively looking for new nonprofits to work with to continue to the work in our department.
So is it outreach or a requirement? Because outreach and requirement are two different things in my opinion. So
at this point, it's outreach because it's not part of the bylaws, so it is outreach at this point.
But not a requirement.
It is not a requirement.
Thank you, Dana. Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you. I wanted to give a little clarity since I was the previous chair, and the genesis of this and was really our youth master plan was part of the genesis for enlarging this. And actually, as I began to serve when I was sworn into office, taking over Director Keck's position, what I noticed on that commission is because we wrote the specifics of qualifications so that I was the only, I guess you would call, layperson on that commission that wasn't involved in the industry of, and I use those terms kind of loosely, but, and so what you have to watch when we have boards and commissions is that you don't get too many industry people. Having lay people on there who don't know the jargon, who maybe have a different perspective on it is good to give the diversity of background on that commission. And I think that's one of the other things, too, we wanted to accomplish is maybe getting some folks that do have an interest in children, youth, and families that may not have that professional background, but they want to serve our community. And that's what we wanted to do is broaden some of the diversity just on the commission so we don't have so many people that are industry related. And, you know, what you tend to, if you get a bunch of attorneys in one room, I'll take it. They think like attorneys. You get a lot of folks who are in individual youth development, this kind of thing. They kind of have a certain way. So to have that diversity of backgrounds, so maybe somebody comes in and goes, well, why don't we do it this way? You know, kind of be that outstanding person that says, well, I know we've done it this way, but why don't we look at something different? I think helps to create that discussion and everything. And it's not to say that everybody on there has a passion for it, but we wanted to broaden it as well and allow some folks that maybe don't have that educational, but do have an interest in doing, you know, the guys like Bob East that started the East Initiative, those kind of entities that maybe want to serve that have a professional business background that would like to be more involved with our youth. So that's kind of some of the genesis for this. And in fact, I thought we had done it last year and realized, I think when I asked Tom a question about it, he said no, it was still at nine members. So that gives hopefully a little more clarity to what we're doing.
Director Richardson?
Yes, thank you, Lance, for that explanation, and I certainly understand the need for that kind of diversity, but I guess my concern and my question was someone having knowledge of the actual issues, because there's so many social ills that these young people are bringing to the table that it created a need for us to have PIT or CYF in the first place, that created a need for us to have a master plan in the first place. So I understand the diversity part, but I wanted to make sure we had people who had knowledge of the actual issue. So your point about having a bunch of attorneys in the room and a bricklayer in that room is not going to help the attorneys deal with whatever legal issues they have to deal with. So I want to make sure somebody has knowledge and expertise of the issues that are impacting so many underserved children, youth, and families, because a lot of them have been marginalized to a certain extent by the very people that we're talking about right now. So that was my rationale for bringing that up. And I understand what you're talking about, but I want to make sure we have people at the table who know the issues that are impacting a lot of marginalized children, youth, and families.
Director Richardson, just to let you know, though I'm an attorney, my first summer job was doing reading lessons according to a new method from UALR at a play and learn school, which traveled to the various housing areas within the city of Little Rock and held school and reading lessons for children. So even lawyers have interest.
Well, that's not going to make me now I'm about to say, that's not going to make me like you anymore. I'll give you a better evaluation when your evaluation time comes up, but I appreciate that explanation.
All right. There being no other questions, all those in favor of this ordinance, please say aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes. Madam Clerk, would you please read the grouped items for the first time?
An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan residential district titled 22 Davenport, short form PDR, located at 22 Davenport, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes, an ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan office district titled Orion Federal Credit Union, short form PDO, located at 1019 North University Avenue, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes, an ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan office district titled TRL Properties, revised short form PDO, located at 12,418 and 12,420 Cantrell Road, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes, an ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan office district titled Dogwood Partners, short form PDO, located at 3023 West 7th Street, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes, an ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a planned industrial district titled Grow Learning Center Revised, short form PID, located at 5 Remington Cove, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes, an ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a planned residential district titled Green Hall Properties, short form PDR, located at 3523 West Capitol Avenue, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes, an ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a planned residential district titled 517 Maple Street, short form PDR, located at 517 Maple Street, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes, an ordinance to approve a planned zoning development, establish a planned residential district titled Innovation Valley, short form PDR, located southwest of 13815 and 13823 Fern Valley Drive, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes, an ordinance to approve a planned zoning development, establish a planned residential district titled Village at Gateway, long form PRD, located west of the existing village at the Gateway Phase 2, 4 blocks west of Viney Ridge Road, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes, an ordinance to approve a planned zoning development, establish a planned residential district titled Fletcher Ridge, long form PRD, located on the north side of Canis Road, west of Chenal Downs Boulevard, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes, an ordinance to repeal Little Rock, Arkansas ordinance number 21,700 of March 5th, 2019, to direct that a competitive selection process begin for a branding program for the 12th Street corridor, to declare an emergency and for the purposes, first reading.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the rules for second reading. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes. Second reading.
An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a planned residential district titled 22 Davenport, short form PDR, located at 22 Davenport. An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan office district titled Orion Federal Credit Union, short form PDO, located at 1019 North University Avenue. An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan office district titled TRL Properties, revised short form PDO, located at 12418 and 12420 Cantrell Road. An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan office district titled Dogwood Partners, short form PDO, located at 3023 West 7th Street. An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan industrial district titled Grow Learning Center, revised short form PID, located at 5 Remington Cove. An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan residential district titled Green Hall Properties, short form PDR, located at 3523 West Capitol Avenue. An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan residential district titled 517 Maple Street, short form PDR, located at 517 Maple Street. An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan residential district titled Innovation Valley, short form PDR, located southwest of 13815 and 13823 Fern Valley Drive. An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan residential district titled Village at the Gateway, long form PRD, located west of the existing Village at the Gateway Phase 2, 4 blocks west of Vimy Ridge Road. An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan residential district titled Fletcher Ridge, long form PRD, located on the north side of Canis Road, west of Chenal Downs Boulevard. An ordinance to repeal Little Rock, Arkansas ordinance number 21,700 to direct a competitive selection process began for a branding program for the 12th Street corridor, to declare an emergency. Second reading.
There's a motion second to move to third and final reading. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes. Third and final reading. Now that we've had 3 readings for the motion, before we continue forward with the vote.
We've only had 2 readings.
Oh, third reading. Sorry. It's 8 o'clock. I'm sorry. You know, we try to get out of here early. So.
I know.
I'm dreaming about a third reading. All right. Third reading.
An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan industrial district titled Grow Learning Center, revised short form PID, located at 5 Remington Cove. An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan residential district titled Green Hall Properties, short form PDR, located at 3523 West Capitol Avenue. An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan residential district titled 517 Maple Street, short form PDR, located at 517 Maple Street. An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan residential district titled Innovation Valley, short form PDR, located southwest of 13815 and 13823 Fern Valley Drive. An ordinance. Hold on. I forgot a whole row. I'll go back on that one. I'm going to go back and pick up 8 through 11. I'm sorry. An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan residential district titled 22 Davenport, short form PDR, located at 22 Davenport. An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan office district titled Orion Federal Credit Union, short form PDO, located at 1019 North University Avenue. An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan office district titled TRL Properties, revised short form PDO, located at 12418 and 12420 Cantrell Road. An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan office district titled Dogwood Partners, short form PDO, located at 3023 West 7th Street. An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan residential district titled Village at the Gateway, long form PRD, located west of the existing Village at the Gateway, Phase 2, 4 blocks west of Vimy Ridge Road. An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan residential district titled Fletcher Ridge, long form PRD, located on the north side of Canis Road, west of Chenal Downs Boulevard. An ordinance to repeal Little Rock, Arkansas ordinance number 21,700 to direct that a competitive selection process begin for a branding program for the 12th Street corridor, to declare an emergency. Third and final reading.
We've now had 3 readings of the ordinances. Are there any questions? Since there are no questions, we'll now go forward with the 2 comment cards before the vote. Mr. Mike Mitchell wanted to visit about item number 17, and after Mr. Mike Mitchell, we'll ask Mr. Ron Muse to please come up to discuss item number 18.
Thank you, Mayor Scott. It's good to see you in government again.
Good to see you in government again as well.
Thank you. And members of the city board. My name is Mike Mitchell. I've been before you before regarding Fletcher's Hollow, which is an historic feature out in West Pulaski County that the board voted 4 years ago to amend the master street plan through Fletcher's Hollow to preserve it. This proposed subdivision is to be located on the east end of Fletcher's Hollow. The 3 concerns are the effect it would have on Fletcher's Hollow, the traffic it will create, and the fact that it's totally out of character with the surrounding area. The subdivision is on approximately 50 acres, 4 houses per acre. It's going to be over 200 homes on approximately 50 acres, and that is going to dump out into Canis Road, which already has a traffic problem at Stewart Road and at Denny Road. I cannot imagine, I don't know how many cars 200 houses would produce, but in the morning and the evening, it's going to be, when it's built out, a real severe problem. I am told there's very little that can be done to oppose the plan, but I felt like that I had to be down here to oppose. I'm speaking for myself. I'm not speaking for our citizens group to oppose the plan. I think it's again going to exacerbate an already traffic problem, and it's so inconsistent with what we have out in the county. So please note my strong objection to this plan. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mitchell. Mr. Muse.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Board of Directors. I appreciate you giving me this opportunity to speak in favor of this ordinance number 18. 3 months ago, I came before you to express how the community felt about having Crafton and Tull and Associates to develop a branding program for us. We did not feel like they had the expertise for it. We had preferred that we have a process like this one that you're proposing to identify marketing and or advertising agencies, 51 of which I have identified in the central metropolitan area that are highly favored to do this sort of work. And I'm happy to see that someone was listening and this was turned around. And I appreciate your vote for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Muse. Director Adcock.
On item 17, is the applicant here?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Spivey.
I would like to know what they plan on doing to protect Fletcher Hollow, please. The gentleman that spoke did send me a picture of a beautiful eagle that now makes its home on Fletcher Hollow. And so I want to know, Bill, how you and your group are going to protect what they have in that area.
Yes, ma'am. Mayor Scott, directors, everybody else. This is the end of a long process. And if you'll bear with me for just a moment, because we didn't know Mr. Mitchell was going to speak tonight, he made a statement in writing at the Planning Commission, and it was read into the record on behalf of a group of people in West Little Rock. Certainly, we have no objection to what Mr. Mitchell has said or him being here, but these issues have been discussed ad nauseum at a number of public meetings with people who are protective of Fletcher Hollow. To presume or assume that Potlatch-Deltic is not equally concerned is simply a mistake. Mr. Daters is here tonight. Be happy to share with you the details, the technical details of what's been done to ensure that this development will have a minimal impact upon Fletcher Hollow. But let me take you back just a few years to when Chenal Downs was developed, and Deltic Timber at that time put in place a canopy easement along the south side of Canis all the way out to Fletcher Creek. Now, on the north side, as part of this development, Deltic has established a separate green space which will also protect the canopy for the entire length of this development. They are also proposing to install a traffic circle with the full support of the POA in Chenal Downs to help, which is exactly opposite and across the street from the entrance to Fletcher Ridge, which will help ensure that traffic flow is smooth through this area. I don't have at my fingertips the exact traffic counts for that road, but you'll remember that at the request of Mr. Mitchell and others, expansion of this road and improving this road was taken off the master street plan. Deltic's not proposing any change in that and hopes to preserve that and the amenities which go along with preserving Fletcher Hollow in conjunction with this and any other development that Potlatch Deltic does along the north side of Canis Road. All of the utilities for which Potlatch Deltic will be responsible will come in from the north side of the property. They'll all be installed underground. This property will drain to the north. There won't be any additional water or anything else coming off this property onto Canis or through Fletcher Hollow. I'm trying to remember all of it. There will be a green space, as with all of Potlatch Deltic's neighborhood developments. There will be a green space all the way around this property, which will buffer it with and from adjacent owners and other Potlatch Deltic neighborhoods to the north, the residents to the east, and also eventually for any further developments to the west of this. Now we didn't come prepared, but I've got most of this at my fingertips. Let me stop for just a moment, if you will, and ask Mr. Daters what I've forgotten, because I'm sure I've forgotten something.
Well, may I ask a question before you leave?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
So actually, the street, Fletcher Hollow, you're not going to touch it?
No.
Okay. All the construction will be off-site of Fletcher Hollow?
Absolutely.
Okay. That was my question. Thank
Okay.
you.
Sorry.
Mr. Daters.
My name's Tim Daters. I'm an engineer with White Daters and Associates. Bill actually forgot one additional thing. Believe it or not, Deltic also imposed a canopy easement on property that it sold to another developer west of Chenal Downs on the south side of the road. So their intention is to preserve the tree canopy down through Fletcher Hollow. It's an amenity. Everybody loves it. Everybody's used to it. We are providing a buffer along Canis that exceeds 100 feet, and we're also avoiding, there's a creek to the west side of this project that we are avoiding. This project does drain through Fletcher Hollow, and so we will be carefully implementing erosion control during construction. But the bulk of Fletcher Hollow west of here flows through Deltic's property. They want to protect it just like everybody else does because it is an amenity.
One last thing, which is off-site. Mr. Mitchell made reference to the dangerous intersection at the confluence of Denny and Canis Roads, which is just east of where Stewart Road comes in. I drive this every day. I live off of Stewart Road. He's absolutely right. With increased traffic in West Little Rock, this has become an area of concern for everybody, including Potlatch Deltic. And Potlatch Deltic has pledged to assist the West Pulaski Citizens Association to work with the county to come up with solutions for making this a safer intersection. So we've done more, the company's done more than just focus on this one site.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Seeing that there are no other questions regarding these ordinances, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes. Madam Clerk, would you please read item number 19 for the first time?
An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan office district titled Shackelford Forest Communities, long form POD, located at 5600 South Shackelford Road, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes, first reading.
There's a motion moved to suspend the rules to the second reading. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes. Second reading.
An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan office district titled Shackelford Forest Communities, long form POD, located at 5600 South Shackelford Road, second reading.
There's a motion and second to suspend the rules, place on third and final reading. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes. Third reading.
An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development, establish a plan office district titled Shackelford Forest Communities, long form POD, located at 5600 South Shackelford Road, third and final reading.
Thank you so much, Madam Clerk, for that third and final reading. Now we have John Hegler for item number 19. John. Just want to get through them.
Good evening, Mayor Scott and Vice Mayor Warwick, ladies and gentlemen of the board. Once again, we're talking about a drug rehab in southwest Little Rock, out in Ward 7. This one's going to be 27.9 acres and spread. That's a lot of drug rehab. You were talking last week about selling your property out Highway 10. Why don't you work a swap and move the drug rehab out to Highway 10 and put something else a little more passable in there? Ward 7 and Ward 2 need cleanup, not adding more drug addicts and problems of that nature. And that's all I got to say on that one.
Thank you so much, Mr. Egler. Vice Mayor Wyrick.
Mayor,
One second, Tom. Vice Mayor Wyrick.
well,
You can go to that. We want to let the Vice Mayor speak first. Vice Mayor Wyrick.
Okay, my comments are about item 19, but we have the applicant here, and I would like for them to come forward and describe what their application is. I met with them before the meeting, and I would love for them to come and tell us what their plans are for this 27 acres that is on the agenda for tonight.
Mr. White, please hurry, please.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the board. I've got the technical covered, but I'm going to let Ms. Carol Witham speak to the use.
Thanks for having me. So this is not a drug rehabilitation center. It's actually a brain institute, which is a medical facility that will mostly house and treat those that have a brain disorder, a mental health disorder, which is no different than any part of our body. But it absolutely is not a drug treatment facility.
Okay. Can I ask some questions of her? Okay.
You are Vice Mayor.
Okay. It's the first time that's ever came in handy.
Mayor, this isn't appropriate. The Fair Housing Act makes it quite clear that medical facilities and rehabilitation facilities are not to be treated any differently than any other zoning application. The question before the board is simply a zoning application appropriate as it's gone before our planning commission. And when we allow these kinds of comments, if the vote turns out to be contrary to that of the applicant, the board's going to have to prove that it wasn't discriminatory in its intent. That's what I was trying to say earlier.
And so, Mr. Carpenter, just help me understand if that's the case, then why have it before the board?
Before the board, it's a zoning issue.
But when there are questions before it, so is the board not to ask questions about it?
They're not to make comments about whether a medical facility is appropriate or inappropriate. They're not to make comments about whether a drug facility is appropriate or inappropriate. Questions such as if it's a medical facility and a hospital and it's going to increase traffic, and what will that traffic do to the area, are totally appropriate because it's not the facility, it's the nature of the business and attracting it. Those are appropriate concerns. But exactly what it's going to do in treating people is something that the board is not supposed to talk about.
Has a board member asked about that question yet?
No, but you've already had a citizen say the comment about we don't need other drug treatment centers out here. Why don't you change the property for that?
And I guess the question is, can a citizen make a statement on the agenda card? That's the point of the agenda card, correct?
Not even supposed to be able to make that statement. That's why I was trying to get the invitation. I wanted to say at that time, that's an inappropriate comment and you cannot consider it.
Well, thank you for that feedback.
Sorry.
No problem. Do appreciate that. Director, Vice Mayor Wyrick.
Yeah, mine have nothing to do with your comments, Tom. I looked at your application. It's like 27 plus acres, and the access is off of Shackleford Road. And there is a neighborhood association that is down south of that called Water's Edge. And one of the things that I found out in talking with you earlier is that the boundary for the facility, the boundary line for the facility and the nearest home in Water's Edge is 300 feet, but the cottages that you intend to build at that location will make them about 500 feet from the nearest home at that location. Is that what we understood? Okay, and honestly, it's been a long night, and we've had a lot of comments about stuff, but I just wanted to say that after talking with the applicant and talking with Mr. White, I think this is it's a good development that we can use in Southwest Little Rock and Ward 7, and so I am supportive of it. So I appreciate y'all coming down and talking to me a little bit earlier. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Weig. Director Hines.
I'm sorry, that was one from earlier.
All right. With no other questions, all those in favor of this particular ordinance, please say aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes.
Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
we forgot to pass the emergency clause on ordinance 18.
All those in favor of the emergency clause for item number 18 indicate by saying aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes for item number 18. We'll now move to item number 20. Well, actually, we need to have emergency clause. All those in favor of the emergency clause for item number 19, please state by saying aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes for item number 19. There's not an emergency clause for 19? All right. I apologize on that one. That being said, let's move towards item number 20. Before we go to item number 20, because it is getting pretty late tonight, it's 8:20, and clearly we're not afraid of staying here to 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock at night. But we do have, I believe, somewhere around 15 item cards for item number 20. We can read all, listen to all 15, but we do, clearly there's most of the item number 20, there's of the 15. Thirteen of the 15 are for. That's one against and one that doesn't say for or against. So for those who are for, would you guys like to consolidate that? If not, that's fine, because we understand that there are 13 of the 15 that are for it. We definitely would love to hear from one of the 13 that are for, and then we only have this one against and allow that one just in the essence of time. But if not, we can go through all 15. Is that, I'm getting a sense of the feeling from those that are for are fine with that? And you'll talk for the four? Bishop Smith will talk for the four. Bishop Smith, could you please approach? And thank you so much for those 13 that are for it. Yes, ma'am? Yes. Bishop, Director Adcock.
Yes, I would like staff to do a presentation first, please.
Staff can do a presentation first. Sorry about that. We're now going into a public hearing. Staff. Thank you, Director Adcock. And I'll look in who's in the order of who goes first, rather than just the bishop. So I'm going to look at see who was first, whether it's the for or against, and that's how we'll proceed in that order. Director Adcock, could you turn on your mic?
This has been before the Planning Commission 3 or 4 times, I think. This has been before this board, I think, once before, and it has changed a little bit since last time it was before the board. And I just wanted the board members to know that this has been going on a long time with this neighborhood, and that and with your department.
Yes, Director Adcock, it has. What the applicant presented and was approved was a conditional use for the prayer garden. And we supported that initial prayer garden because it was, kind of a passive use scenario there. So no large events, no, just to come in, pray, meditate, and leave. And, we're into it as a coming time for reflection. That aspect of it. In our support changed, in this amendment to that for the conditional use, because as you mentioned previously, it was the addition of the bathroom facilities, which would, make it more permanent, more of a destination, more where somebody could stay longer, more of an active use than a passive use, where people could come in and hold small little events there, and that was a concern of the neighborhood that was presented at the Plan Commission and at the board. And the only other additional is previously they did have approval for a gazebo there, and I believe this one, it just shows the location, so we are still in support of that gazebo because that was an original approval in the conditional use.
Okay. And this is on, just off of Roosevelt Road?
Scott, if you bring up the zoning map, you can kind of see the location, and it is. And the reason I keep talking about this passive is you look at the residences that surround the property. It's on the north, it's on the west, and the east across the street. So having a passive use there, we could support where it was not loud.
This is about 1 block from the jail?
The jail is just down and to the right. I believe that's over where.
And what are the streets like around this facility, around the garden?
Are you talking what uses around them or the shape
streets.
of it?
Is it curb and gutters, 2 lanes?
It is generally 2 lanes. There is areas of the roads that surround this development, both going to the north and out to the west, like 26th Street and some others that are not particularly to standard. There is width there, but it's not fully improved.
Is there
but there are others that are, that's adjacent to it that does have curb and gutter.
Is there any parking, and how many parking places does this have?
Currently on site, this one does not contain any parking spaces proposed. It will be parking on the street. And so in residential, you're allowed to park on one side of the street, so that's where they would be, either on Brown or 27th Street.
And so if they park on one side of the street, that makes the streets one way in this neighborhood?
Well, it doesn't quite make it one way.
But one street, one
they're
lane.
allowed, any residential zone, you're allowed to park on one side of the roadway, and vehicles would just have to maneuver based upon where the parking is.
Okay, thank you.
Director Hendricks.
Oh, we've talked. The only thing that I want to share with the neighborhood is that it seems like a safe place. I support it. I know that there are some residents who have talked to Director Adcock about this request, about the request for a restroom. And I think it enhances the neighborhood. Somebody asked something about, we're talking about the restroom being there, I think. And how many people can use a restroom? Only one at a time. And I would suggest that this board really support the bathroom being there. Of course, I had talked to the Planning Commission, and if they were to insist on the bathroom, they would have to start all over with a new application in a different department. That's going to cost some money. How many of you all have seen it? You may not answer, but it's a beautiful place. I would rather see the residents use a potty than to use it on the streets. And I know some of that goes on right now in that neighborhood. It's over by Salvation, I think it's Salvation Army. But it's, no, you all can't talk. I'm talking, okay? But the thing that I would suggest to you all, leave it up to the board, but I think that if these people have heart, and then Dr. Smith has done so much in that community. They have a school, a private school. It's for anybody that wants to attend. You can have banquets. We've had Republican events at the center. We've had Democratic convention things at the center, which belongs to Dr. Smith and the community. So I just really think that, and the Planning Commission did support it. So Ken's face is frowning up. What's up, Ken? But anyway, I know it's left up to this board, but I really support what they're doing. And of course, Jamie has explained to me, as I said earlier, that if they really want the bathroom there, there's a measure that they have to take. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Hendricks. For all those, I did go through the order. Bishop Smith's card was first, and then several after we get to the against, and that's Mr. Donald Mitchell. So Bishop Smith, you'll go first. Yes, ma'am.
It's a no on the planning commission.
That's correct. It was 2 ayes, 7 nays, and 2 absent.
Thank you.
So it did fail. It did fail at the planning commission.
Bishop Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and to the Board of Directors, and to all that are in the audience today. Well, we're happy to note that the throne of prayer, the throne of grace prayer garden is not the question at hand. It's just a couple of more amenities to make it convenient for the upkeep and maintenance primarily. There are those who are from our school, the youth go and maintain the grounds, and there's a lot of greenery, a lot of plants, the grass, seeding, et cetera, the fencing. A lot of maintenance go on in that prayer garden. The reason why we have a throne of grace prayer garden is that the scripture says that for the believer, for Christians, it says in Hebrews 4:16, it says, therefore, let us come boldly to the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need. Now, that prayer garden, we call it the throne of grace because that's where people get mercy. And people who are out here in the street, that's what drew me to Little Rock in the first place almost 40 years ago, riding down Roosevelt, seeing men walking aimlessly down the street. And I said to the Lord, I said, if I ever move anywhere, at the time I had an office downtown in Arkadelphia, because Arkadelphia is where I was born. And I said, I want to move to Little Rock because I really want to reach out to men. So, of course, it happened. And we own several properties between Asher and Roosevelt. And when we first moved in that area on Brown Street, it's a long history, but abbreviated, you couldn't go an hour without hearing gunshots. They were all over the place. We got our windows shot out at least once. We had a shootout on our parking lot right there on Asher between Martin and Brown Street. They've come in and threatened to shoot me. You know, we've gone through the Crips, the Bloods, the posses, the family. We've gone through that. Lieutenant Governor Huckabee asked me to do a prayer over the joint session of the House and Senate back when the gang violence made national history. So I went down to the Capitol and I quoted a scripture. I said, in Ecclesiastes, it says, when a sentence against an evil work is not speedily executed, then the hearts of the sons of men are fully set in them to do evil. In other words, the reason why we have all of this stuff in the street is slow justice. And so I prayed over the joint house of the reps and senators, and immediately Mr. Huckabee gave the chair over to the opposition. And right after that, the sitting governor was indicted. And Governor Huckabee served out the following 2 years and then ran for 2 terms. And we kept in close contact. But you don't hear the kind of shooting on Alice and Brown and Martin. You know, you don't. But people need a place to go to obtain mercy. The scripture says that mercy rejoices against judgment. There are people out here that have done so much wrong. If God came down on them, they'd go down in a heartbeat to the grave. But if they can make it to a prayer garden, the scripture says mercy rejoice against judgment. In other words, it cuts their losses short. So that's why we have the garden in the first place. Now, to maintain it, we like to do things in an excellent way. We don't like to just haphazardly put things together. We spent over $300,000 on the center that used to be a seminary, and it sat there for 10 years, boarded up 90-something windows. And we spent 2 or 3 years to renovate that place in the apartment buildings. We sold our home. We put the money into the apartment buildings and made them residents for people who were going to teach in our school. Across the street, we bought up that property, built a gymnasium, built a school. And we spent $1 million and never had a building fund. God just brought the money in. So Asher, the name Asher means happy, but it doesn't mean friendly. So we got to have a whole lot of grace, and we need some mercy. And so we're not going anywhere. I mean, we could live in a gated community where you have to push the buttons to get behind the gate. No, we're in the hood to do some good. That's what we're here for. And I know there have been some people who don't like the fact that we built a 5,600 square foot home on Brown Street, but we built it right next door to a dope house and an old gray-headed man who was pimping little girls. We walked into his house and saw naked women on the wall, looked at the old man, and claimed the house, bought it out from under him. And two lots from that, the guy come from West Little Rock trying to help these prostitutes. Brown Street used to be the main prostitution stroll in the city, from Roosevelt to Asher. My wife walked with the prostitutes to say, if you're going to pick them up, you got to pick me up too. So the guy was trying to help these drug addicts and everything. And one day I went to him because he never came to the center to tell me what he was doing. They hit him in the head. Pretty soon he died. We bought the property and built a home there. So to make it shorter than it needs to be, it don't have to be any longer, but all we need is just a little amenity here and a little amenity there. We have older people coming. They want to sit down, and they don't need to be crossing their legs trying to hold it. Just go in there and just use a little lavatory and come on out. Mama over there, 84 years old. She loved to go to the prayer garden and sit there and meditate and ruminate and cogitate and contemplate what she's going to be communicating. Just a little old hole in the ground with a little lock on the door. That's all we're asking for. And a little thing to put over your head to keep the sun from, messing with your melanin and your skin. I yield my case.
All right, Bishop. Thank you so much. Director Richardson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Dr. Smith made some interesting points in terms of what was going on in that area back in the early 90s, and it certainly was a lot of gang activity, a lot of violence in that community, and not much investment or reinvestment. And certainly, I think a lot of what I have problems with up here sometimes, a lot of demolition of homes that have been declared vacant and unsafe. And I think his points about Asher is certainly clear with respect to prostitution, because Asher was named, it was identified as an area for prostitution, and lands back in terms of jargon. That's one of the reasons why at university Asher becomes Colonel Glenn, because before it used to be Asher past university. But because it had that reputation and that name and that association with prostitution, when you get to university, Asher becomes Colonel Glenn. Now, 20-some years ago, 30 years ago, that was not the case. So back to jargon, name association and identifying areas with particular problems or social ills is some of the things that drive policies, unfortunately. But I think Dr. Smith made some great points about the gang activity, the violence in that area, and certainly a lot of the community disintegration in that area, and I think they've done a good job of trying to reinvest and attract people to that area and help us improve certain parts of our community that doesn't have the same kind of investment that we see in other parts of our community. So I just wanted to echo his point about the name association and the jargon and how we use words or names to express or determine or describe how certain parts of our community are identified. So that's part of the reason why Asher became Colonel Glenn at university, because it was associated with prostitution. For a lot of you guys that don't know that.
Thank you, Director Richardson. Director Hendricks?
Thank you. Would you have those persons who support what we're talking about stand?
All those that are in favor of item number 20, please stand. All right. Thank you so much. Now, Mr. Mitchell.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and all the elected officials here. I really appreciate the grandiose. You know, I'm glad we always know that everything's pretty expensive what the Smiths do around there. And also, we're talking about the 90s. Now we're in 2019. And that's what she did then. We could commend her for doing this. But I have personally asked Ms. Smith to help us to move forward in maybe trying to improve our neighborhood by getting houses refurbished and also building new houses. Mrs. Smith said she didn't have time. Okay, another thing, boy, they got me when she said she didn't have time. Oh, by the way, they said that the prayer guard was going to be for the neighborhood. But I think that was a misnomer there, because the prayer garden is always locked. Now, the explanation that was given on the last meeting was saying that they didn't have anybody to supervise. Now, from knowing the work that Ms. Smith does, she is very good at raising money. I'm just wondering why she didn't work too hard to get volunteers in the prayer garden. And boy, you know, I would love to have come over and participated in the prayer garden, but I didn't get an invitation. So, you know, I'm part of the neighborhood, but I'm left out of the neighborhood. But what we want, is to improve our neighborhood. And Ms. Smith has said that she's 66 years old. So evidently, when I asked her about helping us to improve the neighborhood so that we could have a multicultural neighborhood with, just like they have in the Heights, or maybe I'm reaching too far, like they have it over on 14th and Central, over in 14th and Park. I mean, I would love to look out at a neighborhood that's clean, that's safe. You know, when I go out and pick up paper, when I go and pick up furniture right by her street on Brown Street, I don't see her out there. I don't see any of her entourage out there. I'm out there. I'm for moving forward. She's 66 years old. She said, hey, I got to have this. But she has energy to come here and tell you she wants a bathroom amenities, but she don't have the energy and does no longer want to work to build the community that they said they brought it to where it is today. So what I'm asking you to do is to think about us moving forward, having a bathroom, having a prayer garden. Oh, by the way, she got a church 2 blocks up. Is that going to help move the neighborhood forward? Because we need to move forward. I'm 63 years old, and I want to see the neighborhood improve. If you're tired, I understand that. But if you're going to be part of the solution, help us. If you're going to be part of the problem, hey, go home, sit down somewhere, because this is what we're doing. My little 9-year-old kid my granddaughter told me one day, we had trailers, had things going on. She said, Papa, what's going on with this neighborhood? I said, honey, well, what do you think is wrong with this neighborhood? She said, the neighbors need to work together, Papa, for it to be better. So I humbled myself and I asked the Smith to help me, to help us. Now, if you ever want to see MMI, look at the Smiths. Me, myself, and I. That's what they're about. They may be tired, and that's why they may be going in that direction. But hey, I have done it. I've asked for the help. I know that she has the ingenuity, but she doesn't want to do that anymore. So I'm going to leave with that.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mitchell. All those in favor Mr. Moore? Oh, yeah. All right. Well, actually, we need to close this particular hearing. 1 second, man. What's your name? Ruth Bell. Oh, 1 second, Ms. Bell. Hold on 1 second. I didn't see your name on the against. We've already read all the four.
I don't have any cards. I gave.
Yeah, I don't think we have one for you, Ms. Bell.
I gave you. I mean, I don't have any cards over here.
I put it over there.
Were you here at 6 o'clock, Ms. Bell? Because I don't have one for you.
No, I don't have any cards. I gave.
Yeah, I don't have one for Ms. Bell.
You don't? Oh, gee.
No, ma'am. I'm looking. No, you are correct. I found it right here. Ms. Bell, sorry about that.
Don't feel badly. The previous mayor forgot me once or twice, too.
Well, I can assure you it was not intentional.
Okay, that's all right. That's what he said, too. I'm Ruth Bell. I'm with the League of Women Voters, and I checked opposed on this because let me go back to memory lane a little, very briefly. At the Planning Commission, we opposed this variance, this request, because there was no limit placed on the number of people who would be in the garden at one time, and because there was no off-street parking available at the site. And we felt that was very difficult for the residents who live around that area. After the Planning Commission turned down the application, Dr. Smith, the applicant, met and talked to me and committed that they would put a cap of 50 people at one time in the prayer garden for a particular activity, and that would be about all the chairs on that side of the room here. And also that she said that they were making arrangements with owners of private parking lots nearby in the more commercial area adjacent to have off-street parking for people who are going to use the garden. I told her that if she said that on mic tonight, so that there would be some record of it in case the city or neighbors in the future would like to revisit this issue, that we would withdraw our objection to this application.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ruth Bell. Director Eckhart, did you have a question? You have a statement. Yes, ma'am.
This neighborhood is a very unique neighborhood. This is Johnny Pugh's neighborhood. And in working with them and everything, and this prayer garden is a wonderful idea if it was just a prayer garden for quiet meditation. But they've had events there, and you can imagine 50 people or 30 or 40 people in your neighborhood singing for hours on end, 2 or 3 hours. And there's no way to, turn it down. It's people out in the open. This neighborhood has been to the Planning Commission 3 or 4 times. They've been here. This is the same neighborhood that came before us with the modular homes in the neighborhood that we asked to get out of the neighborhood. So I would ask you to please support this neighborhood, because I don't think any of us would want one religion or another religion to set up in our neighborhood with unlimited times. There's no limit put on the times, the days, how often, or anything. And as we add the restrooms, this is just going to add more people in there ongoing. So please vote against this.
Thank you, Director Adcock. Director Hendricks?
As Director of Ward 1, I'm reluctant to ask the board members how many of you have attended. I've heard the number, 50 people at one time. I doubt that. People that attend church now is down. So if anybody sit up here and say it's going to be 50 to 100 people there, I would call them something natural, okay? You all can do what you want to do, but I think that it's time for us to adhere to Mrs. Smith and her group because they're doing something I think that's spiritual. And that's what's happening with this country right now. It's on the downfall. It's going straight to hell if we don't change some of our ways and attitudes toward people. And I think that the group has come here. They have asked, the majority of them, I have to get on my color train. They're black. And it's time that we support some of the things that minorities want to do in this town. I can't see 20 people going to the bathroom at one time. I go to church. And usually when I rush out to go, maybe 2 or 3 women in that bathroom. I can't see no 50 people. Now, if you're talking about one of these big things where the rockers are going to be jazz, and you're going to see 100 because they're drinking that stuff. But I think that what we really need to do is to support this program. I know, I'm a customer. I've been up here 12 years, and I know how we operate. But I'm going to pray for you, and I hope that we will support Ms. Smith.
Thank you so much, Director Hendricks. Director Wright?
Okay, I'm slightly confused. I thought I heard quiet meditation in a prayer garden. I didn't know I was talking about special events or having church service. That's something totally different. Because I don't want that down street from my house. Because I got some vacant lots and I don't want nobody building a garden, coming there having church. I'm trying to sleep. I don't want that.
Yeah.
And I'm a church person. I'm in church before the pastor get there. Okay? So I'm not against church. But there is some way to be decent and in order. So if you're talking about quiet meditation and prayer, I don't have any problem with that.
Yes, ma'am.
Because that's what we need.
Yes, ma'am. Director Peck?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. How many cards do you have against and how many for?
2 against and 13 for.
That's what I wanted to know. Thanks.
All right. This hearing is now in conclusion. Are there individuals, I'm sorry, do we have a motion now to approve this?
I have to read
You
it.
got to read it. Let's do it and read it. I'm trying to get us to read it right now. Let's read it.
A resolution to approve a revised conditional use permit to allow revisions to an existing prayer garden use on the property located at 2700 Brown Street, Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes.
There's a motion and second move for the adoption of the resolution. There's a question from Director Campiris. Clarification on the yes versus a no, Mr. Carpenter.
Yes means that you're approving the conditional use permit as asked for by the applicant.
All those in favor of approving this resolution, state by saying aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. We're asking for a roll call. There's a roll call.
Director Hendricks. Director Richardson. Director Webb.
No.
Director Peck.
No.
Director Hines.
Yes.
Director Wright.
Yes.
Director Campuris.
No.
Director Fortson.
Aye.
Director Adcock.
No.
Vice Mayor Wyrick.
Yes.
Director Richardson, would you like to change your vote?
Yes.
To what?
Yes.
To yes? 6-4.
64 ayes have it. Motion approved. Board, we do have on the agenda a flood update. We will get that emailed to you tonight. All those in favor of adjournment? You got one. Oh, and before Director Campiris states something, today is Director Hendricks' birthday. She is a very young 50, a very young 50, 89 years old. I said she is 89 and young and full of vibrancy, and we are happy to say happy birthday to you, Director Hendricks. All right, all right. Director Compurius. We're on a high note now, Director Compurius. All right, all right. We'll turn Director Compurius on.
I think we've just started trying to get money back into our reserve fund, the capping. And I went around this weekend and I looked at our community centers, and our 2018 actual revenue from our community centers was $300,000, and the expenditures was $2,378,000. And I went to all of them, and I'll have to say that Doris's and the Southwest Community Center are exactly what we want in a community center. They're active. There's lots of people there. I was there last night, and between basketball and karate and all sorts of things, the place was full at the Southwest Community Center. But I'm sure there will be another budget amendment. But if we want to start looking at some money and start talking about quality versus quantity, which is the problem we have now, then we need to start enhancing those community centers that are doing a great job and start looking at phasing out, like we're doing at golf courses, the ones that aren't doing a great job. I will be glad to pass this or have them send it out on the pony or send it out to someone of these numbers, because they're pretty startling. The second thing that I would like y'all to start looking at is alert centers. When they were put into place, we put them in high crime areas that were supposed to be mobile, and we've now morphed into permanent locations of community centers. And again, we've got quantity, but I'm not sure quality in all the alert centers. So we either need to figure out how we're going to make them good, or we need to start reprogramming them and seeing how we can do that. And if we're going to look at really making this a vibrant budget where we have the opportunity to move forward, these are two areas I'd like to look into. The third thing that Gene and I talked about at dinner is that one of us is going to go to the police and one's going to go to the fire and look at the budget and see if we can take non-personnel issues and see if we can see anything in the budget that we think that we could cut. Now, we're not talking about cutting any personnel, but we're going to just go look at it and see, because we need to know the budget better. So those are the three things. I'll give this to the mayor. He can send it out. We need to look at the alert centers, and then we're going to start looking at these other things. So thank you.
I'll send that out. Dean, I do have that information. I'll pass it. I'll email it out to all the board for that information. Again, tonight has been a long evening. I do want to share appreciation to the board. I know we made some tough decisions tonight, but we made the right decision, and that's being fiscally responsible to our taxpayers. That's by right-sizing our government, making certain that we have reoccurring revenues that match our reoccurring expenses. This will protect and advance the future of our city. As you know, this amends the 2019 budget approved in 2018. With that being said, we're going forward. We have close 6 to 7 months left in the remaining of the year. As you know, the next step is to prepare for the 2020 budget. That we will work to bring a proposed budget to the board for consideration. We definitely will be taking into account everything that's already been passed for this particular budget and going into an annualized session, among other things that we'll look to provide to the board as a proposed budget. One of the things which this is now will be my first opportunity to have and author a budget along with our city manager, to provide to the board. I want to make certain everyone knows there's going to be a participatory budgeting process that we invite the community to play a role in sharing their feedback before we come to a proposition phase. And so it'll be a bit different than we've done in the past in this city. And so we want to make certain that all are involved in the communication process of the proposed budget as we look to build a better future for the city of Little Rock. So again, I want to appreciate everyone coming together to have an agreement that protects and advances our fiscal future for our taxpayers. All those in favor of adjournment, please say aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Meeting adjourned.